What's up, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with NIO, Tesla, SPY, and the overall markets. I'm also going to talk about what's going on with the share prices for all these different companies and why NIO saw some downside despite the fact that the market has seen more upside, and whether or not the downside is done because NIO did close below $5. And is a sign of weakness thus far. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Weeble link. If you deposit any amounts of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. And deposit $2,000 or more, and you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends very soon in just about 7 days. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So as far as NIO goes, we're doing a good job so far at holding up. But just know that we've been dipping quite a bit, rejecting off our 20 EMA. We had some bad news that came that caused NIO to dip, despite the fact that Tesla absolutely exploded, and despite the fact that the market got bought back up by these bulls. So the question is, what's going to happen from here? And does NIO look more bearish? The answer is yes, it does, because we are closing below $5 now. And when you look at the daily time frame of NIO like this, you will see that we have these lower imbalances below. We also have these gaps all the way down the low fours. So unfortunately, on the daily chart, we look pretty weak, and I do think there's a risk of more downside. We could attempt to rebound first before it continues lower, but just be very mindful of the risks involved, especially as we approach the next imbalances. But there is some downside potential for this chart. I'll talk more about this in just a couple of minutes, but just know one thing: Tesla was the big winner of the day. This thing closed at 260. It's up 22% for the day. Insane squeeze and insane pump. We'll have to be watching to see how things end up progressing for this, at least moving forward. But this was a great move by Tesla after they had some very strong earnings. Earnings was an absolute insane beat by Tesla. They crushed it. They beat on EPS, but their revenue was a small miss. Despite that, everything else was a nice beat. And we saw nice improvements in margins. The Cybertruck was profitable, and there's a lot of hype involving their Cybercab AI technology as well. For the Cybercab, it's expected to be coming out as soon as next year for a few being produced, and then mass production could be starting in 2026, possibly. That's what Elon Musk was saying. We saw Tesla absolutely explode as a result of that news, and they also had strong guidance for Q4 and also 2025. So that's why the share price exploded. I personally hope that this would help NIO pump, but unfortunately, it was not necessarily enough, and NIO got hit with its own bad news that slowed it down. Now, for the markets for tomorrow, just know that tomorrow is going to be Friday, October 25th, 2024. There's not much coming out except at 10 o'clock a.m. we have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Report, not to mention more data like that. And everything else is going to be quite minor, so we'll have to see how things end up going. On top of this, we have the Fear and Greed Index. Currently, greed is making up the majority of sentiment. It has decreased a bit, but this still gives more leeway for the market to push higher. Momentum is still at greed as the market tips just a little bit, but now we're seeing buyers still defending it. And then on top of this, the puts and call option ratio is still at greed, hasn't really shifted much. The VIX is also just barely holding its 50 daily moving average, so we'll see how that ends up holding up. For tomorrow, just notes that we have very close to a little bit over 300,000 calls expiring, and we have just under 800,000 of these puts expiring, for 578 being max pain and a 262 put to call ratio. We'll have to see how things end up going with this, but just be very careful, at least nonetheless. As far as NIO goes, I also want to mention that it ended up dipping because of the fact that we got some negative sentiment involving it. We saw a bit of a dip right here because of the fact that we saw some new ZAC consensus estimates actually coming down for the full year. And they're also saying that their estimates for what they see for the future is not as strong for NIO. So they're looking for an estimated projection of earnings of a loss of $1.37 per share for the year, and revenue at about $9.84 billion. So they're anticipating that there's going to be a slowdown, at least in that end, and other factors like that in terms of their EPS. That's what's a little bit concerning. It's not the best of news, at least for NIO. We also had some negative sentiment because of that. Besides that, when it comes to price predictions, things are still quite bullish for the longer term. Do not forget that NIO's all-time high was at $63, and we're still very, very affordable compared to that. But for the short term, we still remain bearish despite these bullish targets for the longer term, especially as we approach the next couple of years. So I think that NIO has more downside potential for the short term, but the long-term projections still remain very bullish for the $20+ target for the next couple of years. Volume is at 48 million. We're waiting for them to expand their capacities before they start scaling up and then improving their profitability. But the shortfall, the shortfall remains a little bit more bearish, and JP Morgan has given us an overweight rating. There's not really a whole lot else that's going on. The price-price ratio is weak. NIO is still kind of weak right now compared to the markets. Fridays tend to be green about 53% of the time, and we tend to see more volatility around the 11 o'clock a.m. period and also during the final hours of the day. But nonetheless, guys, NIO still looks very weak compared to the market. So what do I think is going to pan out? If we manage to reclaim $5, we could attempt to get back up towards 5.2 to fill the gap above. And if we can't hold above 5, there's going to be a higher potential risk of us dipping all the way down towards 4.8. If that fails us, there's going to be an even bigger dip coming. But I think that the odds favor this potential dip that could be coming to about 4.8. If we don't hold above $5, we're looking for 4.8 as our next potential target. So watch to see if that ends up being the case. We're going to be very open-minded nonetheless. As far as SPY goes, SPY is once again trying to hold its daily 20 EMA, and with the fact that we're trying to hold above this is a very, very good sign. I also want to call out the fact that when you look at the 4-hour time frame right over here, you will see that SPY is still doing a good job of trying to hold very close to its 50 EMA. If we manage to break past that, we're looking for a bigger push back up for 580.8, excuse me. And if that breaks, we're looking for an even bigger pump up here to this next imbalance. So to me, it looks like there are buyers stepping in as SPY came down. It's about 574 yesterday, came up, made a lower high, made a higher low, made a higher low, and now it could be trying to push back up to this resistance. So tomorrow it does favor a push for 580, and we'll see if that lasts. But look and see if we get some more buyers to step in. But there is potential on the 4-hour time frame. On ES, it's the same thing. We're actually holding support very nicely, making a higher low. This is favoring a push tomorrow for 58.60. Then we might see a lot of consolidation with all the option expirations as it's going to be a Friday, but look for some more upside potential. For Nvda, we came down here, came up, made a higher low, and now we're trying to push up to this imbalance. We're looking for basically 141.4 as our resistance. I think we could be pushing up there. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin's looking more bullish. We'll have to see if 68,000 holds if we hold above it. Our next target is going to be all the way up here towards this 68, 69,000 area, just under 69,000, a little bit around there. So we're looking for more upside potential in Bitcoin. Tesla remains very bullish, but it's starting to cool off a bit. It might cool back down towards the 255 area before it attempts to rebound again. And there is going to be another explosive move to the upside coming again later on. Look for a small dip on Tesla. It needs to cool off just a bit before it continues to pump even more. I still think that Tesla could approach the 270 area as time goes on. Might be looking for a dip before it tries to rebound. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. As far as NQ goes, as long as we don't lose 20,275, I think we favor a big push for 20,500. If we lose this, we're looking for a dip back down towards 20,000. My gut tells me this is favoring upside, so as long as 20,275 holds, we're looking for 20,500 as our target. For the QQQ, as long as we don't lose 489, we're favoring a big push back up for 494. So I think the odds favor 494 very soon. For Apple, as long as we don't lose 230, I think this is favoring a bounce, and we could be looking for 232 as our target for tomorrow for a small little rebound. As long as Netflix also doesn't lose 750, which was our 4-hour 20 EMA, this is also favoring a bounce back up for 760. So I think there's a good chance that this ends up pushing up. For Supermicro, we're also fighting at 46.2. We'll see if this holds or not. If it does not hold above that, we could be tipping back down. Might see a lot of consolidation in this range. For the IWM Russell 2000, if we break 220, we're looking for a push back up towards 222. So we'll see if that ends up being the case for us. For Coinbase, we look more bullish. If we manage to break past 210, we're looking for a bigger pump back up for 212. I see potential in this to try to bounce. Amazon's also trying to rebound. We could be looking for a test of 187 tomorrow, then some consolidation. Meta's trying to rebound as well. It could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 568, which if it breaks, we're looking for 573 as our next target. For Microsoft, we'll have to see if we could hold above 421. As long as we hold above that, we're looking for a push back up for 426. And then for Google, we're trying to rebound. We'll have to see if we can break past 165. If that breaks, we're looking for a bigger pump back up towards 167. So we'll also see if that ends up being the case. But with that being said, guys, I just want to appreciate you guys so much for listening. As far as NIO goes, unfortunately, NIO's looking a little bit weak right now compared to the broader markets, especially on the daily time frame. I think this imbalance down here may attract it back down to the 4.8s. It's possible we retest the low 5s tomorrow morning, but then I anticipate a little bit more downside now that we're failing to hold 5. 5 is supposed to be our critical support, but NIO is losing it, so please don't be surprised if there's a little bit more downside. But this, once again, could be another buying opportunity because For the long term, I'm still a big bull for NIO. I think they're going to be making a big comeback once they get their EPS up and we see a lot better margins and a lot more profitability. They're expanding right now to different areas, which is preparing them for the future. And I think that as time goes on, their sales are going to improve and so will their margins. But for the short term, we remain bearish, and this is just another buying opportunity for the long term, in my personal opinion. I thank you all for listening. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys very soon. The next one for tomorrow. NIO to the moon. The long term is still very bright despite the short-term downside. I still think there's more potential downside coming. So it's another dip buying opportunity, not financial advice. But that's my view for the time being. Thanks again for listening, and peace out.